What if everything you've ever wanted, every goal, every relationship, every achievement was designed to leave you empty? Not because you're doing life wrong, but because that's exactly how life was built. One philosopher figured this out over 200 years ago. He was ignored for most of his life. Then, after he died, the greatest minds of the modern world called him one of the most important thinkers who ever lived. His name was Arthur Schopenhauer, and what he discovered about human existence is uncomfortable, but it might just be the most useful thing you have ever heard. Welcome to the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was born in 1788 in what is now known as Gdansk, Poland. His family moved to Hamburg when he was 5. His father was a wealthy merchant and expected Arthur to follow in the same path. However, Arthur had other ideas. From an early age, he was drawn to books and ideas rather than business. A trip across Europe with his parents changed him. He saw poverty and suffering everywhere he looked. It struck him. He wanted to understand why the world worked the way it did, and why so much of it seemed to go wrong. In 1809, Schopenhauer enrolled at university. He soon found his way to philosophy. He later transferred to the University of Berlin for a stronger program. But he grew frustrated. Academic philosophy felt disconnected from real life. It was obscure. It was tangled up with religion, and Arthur wanted no part of it. So he left. He spent the next decade writing and thinking on his own. By age 30, Schopenhauer had written everything that would later define his career. His main work, The World as Will and Representation, was published in 1819. Almost nobody read it at the time. His core idea went like this: the world we experience is not the real world. It is a picture created by our minds. We cannot see things as they truly are, only as our senses present them to us. But Schopenhauer went further. He argued that behind all of our experience, there is one single force driving everything. He called it the will to live. This force is not intelligent, it has no plan, it does not care about you, it simply strives blindly to keep itself going. It drives every living thing to survive, feed, and reproduce, and you are an expression of it. Of all the things the will uses us for, reproduction is its greatest priority. This is why love and attraction feel so overwhelming. It is not romance, though. It is biology with a disguise on. Schopenhauer argued that we do not fall in love with people who are good for us. We fall in love with people who are useful to the will, people whose traits balance out our own, compensating for our imbalances to produce the strongest possible next generation. A very rational person is drawn to someone passionate, a short person to a tall one. We experience this as chemistry. Schopenhauer saw it as a mechanism. And here is the dark part. The person the will selects for reproduction is almost never the best person. The will does not care about your happiness. It cares about its own continuation. This is why so many people end up in relationships that feel electric at the first and painful later. The attraction was real, but it was never really about you. Schopenhauer had little sentimentality about romantic love. He respected it the way you might respect a force of nature, something powerful, impersonal, and largely indifferent to the individual caught inside it. So why was this a problem? Because the will has no goal, it can never be satisfied. And since we are part of it, neither can we. We chase things, we achieve them, we feel nothing, then we chase the next thing. Schopenhauer put it plainly, when our needs are met, we do not feel joy. We feel the absence of pain, and then boredom fills the gap. He saw life as suffering by design, not suffering as bad luck, suffering as the default state. He also made a sharp observation about self-awareness. Animals suffer, but because they cannot reflect on their suffering the way humans can, they are spared an extra layer of anguish. Our intelligence, the thing we are most proud of, is also what makes us most miserable. Look at the faces of the elderly, he wrote. Most are marked not by peace, but by disappointment. A lifetime of chasing what the will promised, and finding it never delivered. So, what can we do about it? Schopenhauer offers two main answers. The first was for a rare type of person, someone willing to step almost entirely outside the demands of the will, to live simply, to give up status, romantic pursuit, and material ambition, to want very little and need even less. In Buddhist tradition, this person is a monk. Schopenhauer admired this path deeply. He just recognized that almost nobody takes it. The second answer was more accessible: art and philosophy. Great art, he believed, holds up a mirror to existence without flinching. It shows us life as it actually is, not as we wish it to be. Greek tragedy, dark literature, music that carries genuine weight. These things do not comfort us with lies. They comfort us with honesty. When you engage with art seriously, you step briefly outside the will's grip. You observe life rather than being dragged by it. That distance, even if temporary, is relief. This is why Schopenhauer became known as the philosopher of artists. He was one of the first thinkers to argue that art is not decoration. It is one of the few genuine tools we have against suffering. His practical advice for everyone else was simpler: not chasing happiness. Focus instead on reducing pain. The safest way of not being very miserable is not to expect to be very happy. Schopenhauer's ideas are not just theory, they are practical. Here are 5 ways to apply them. Number 1. Stop chasing happiness. Reduce pain instead. Most people spend their lives pursuing pleasure. Schopenhauer says this is the wrong target. Pleasure fades. Satisfaction never lasts. Instead, ask yourself, what in my life is causing unnecessary suffering? Remove that. The goal is not a life full of highs. It is a life with fewer lows. Number 2. Question your desires, especially romantic ones. Before you pursue something intensely, ask whether you actually want it or whether something deeper is driving you. The will is not on your side. It uses desire as a tool. When you feel a powerful pull towards something or someone, slow down. Look at it clearly. Not everything that feels urgent actually serves you. Number 3. Engage seriously with art. Schopenhauer believed art was one of the few genuine escapes from the relentless drive of the will. Music, literature, painting, these are not entertainment. They are tools for clarity. Build time into your life to engage with them slowly and seriously, not passively, actively. Number 4. Simplify your desires. The more you want, the more the will controls you. Look at what you are chasing and ask whether you actually want it, or whether you have just been told you want it. Cut what does not serve you. Need less, not out of poverty, but out of choice. Sit with solitude as number 5. Schopenhauer valued time alone deeply. He lived his final years quietly, with few possessions and a small dog, and described this period as among the most peaceful of his life. The person cannot be alone with themselves, is always at the mercy of the world around them. Silence is not emptiness, it is a space for clarity. Schopenhauer spent most of his life being ignored. His lectures were unpopular. His books went largely unread for decades. He struggled to find an audience, and for a long time it seemed like the world had no interest in what he had to say. He also failed repeatedly in his personal life. Relationships did not work out, fame did not come. For years, it seemed as though life was making his own pessimism look justified. Recognition only came in his 50s after publishing a collection of essays in 1851. He finally had readers, he finally had admirers, but by then he had already spent 30 years working without reward, driven by nothing other than the belief that what he was doing mattered. In his final years, he lived simply in an apartment in Frankfurt, Germany. He had his books, he had his routines, and a white poodle as a companion. By most measures, it was a quiet and modest life, but by his own account, it was a peaceful one. He had, in the end, practiced what he preached. He died in 1860, at the age of 72. After his death, his influence spread in ways he never lived to see. Friedrich Nietzsche read him as a young man and called him his greatest teacher, even as he later rejected the pessimism. Freud drew on his ideas about unconscious drives. Wagner credited him with transforming how he thought about music. Tolstoy, Proust, and Beckett all carried his thinking into their work. The pattern of his life is one you see again and again in history. The thinker who is too early, the work that the world is not yet ready for. The long silence followed, eventually by recognition. What kept Schopenhauer going was not applause, it was the refusal to deviate. He never abandoned his ideas. He kept building, kept defending, kept writing, decade after decade, with or without an audience. That alone is worth thinking about. There is enormous comfort in that. When you stop blaming yourself for not feeling satisfied, something loosens. The pressure drops. You stop waiting for the moment when everything finally feels like enough, because you understand now that that moment was never coming. And from that place, something useful happens. You stop chasing and start choosing. You become more deliberate. You ask better questions. Not, how do I get more, but what do I actually need? Schopenhauer was also one of the first Western thinkers to take Buddhism seriously as a philosophical tradition. He saw in it a mirror of his own conclusions. That desire is at the root of all suffering, and that liberation comes not from getting what you want, but from wanting less. Schopenhauer does not offer you a happy ending, but he offers you something rarer. He offers you an honest account of what life actually is, stripped of the illusions that cause so much unnecessary pain. In a world built on distraction and false promise, that kind of honesty is not depressing. In its own quiet way, it is one of the most freeing things you can find. If you liked this video, please give it a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.